She was America's sweetheart, the girl who made the entire country laugh for over a decade. The actress who walked onto the Hollywood Walk of Fame in November 2022, using a cane, trembling but smiling, and received something most celebrities never get: a standing ovation just for showing up. This week, on April 17th, 2026, a devastating report broke across entertainment news. According to TMZ, Christina Applegate was admitted to a hospital in Los Angeles in late March and remains hospitalized. The exact circumstances have not been officially confirmed. Her spokesperson declined to comment on whether she is currently hospitalized or what treatment she may be receiving. But here is what we do know. She has been hospitalized more than 30 times since her MS diagnosis in 2021. She published a raw, gut-wrenching memoir just weeks ago, and in a recent interview, she looked directly into the camera and said that death is something she thinks about every single day. This is not just a celebrity health update. This is the story of a woman who spent 50 years building one of the most remarkable careers in American television, only to face a diagnosis that stopped everything. A woman who refused to disappear quietly, who turned her pain into a podcast, then a memoir, and kept showing up even when her body said no. Have you ever wondered what it truly costs to keep fighting when your own body becomes the enemy? If a disease took everything from you, your career, your mobility, your independence, what would you hold on to? Think about that, because Christina's answer might surprise you. If this woman's courage has ever moved you, drop a heart right now. Stay with us, because the full story of what's happening this week is only just beginning. To understand the weight of what Christina Applegate is facing today, you first need to understand what she built. Because this is not a story about someone who had it easy and then lost it. This is a story about someone who earned every single thing, and then had it taken by a disease that does not negotiate. Christina Applegate was born on November 25th, 1971 in Hollywood, California. Her mother, Nancy Pretty, was an actress who raised Christina largely on her own after separating from her father, record executive Bobby Applegate. There was no silver spoon. There was just a little girl who grew up watching her mother work and decided she wanted to do the same. By the time she was 3 months old, she had already appeared on television. By kindergarten, she was a member of the Screen Actors Guild. This was not a childhood. It was a career in motion. Then came 1987. Fox Television launched its very first primetime sitcom, and a 15-year-old Christina Applegate stepped into the role that would define a generation: Kelly Bundy, the lovably dim, fiercely funny daughter on Married with Children. For 11 seasons, she made America laugh, and quietly, steadily, proved she was far more than a pretty face in a tight skirt. But Kelly Bundy was just the beginning. After the show ended in 1997, Christina did what most typecast sitcom stars never manage. She reinvented herself. She won an Emmy for a guest appearance on Friends. She earned a Tony nomination on Broadway for Sweet Charity in 2005. She starred in Anchorman alongside Will Ferrell. She became one of People magazine's most beautiful people in the world in 2009. And then, in 2019, she delivered the performance of her life in Netflix's Dead to Me, earning Emmy nominations for all 3 seasons. Raw, funny, devastating. That show was supposed to be her triumphant second act. Instead, it became her farewell. From Kelly Bundy to Emmy nominee, Christina built one of the most remarkable careers in television history. But here's what nobody saw coming. Do you remember where you were when you first heard she had MS? Drop it in the comments. I want to read every single one. It was the summer of 2021. Christina Applegate was in the middle of filming the 3rd and final season of Dead to Me when something inside her body quietly broke. She had been feeling symptoms for a while. A stumble here, a numbness there. Things she dismissed, things she pushed through, the way performers are trained to do. But this time, there was no pushing through. In August 2021, Christina Applegate posted a message to the world that stopped Hollywood cold. A few months ago, she wrote, she had received a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. She described it as a strange journey. She asked for privacy. And then, in true Christina Applegate fashion, she made a joke. Because humor has always been her armor. What she did not say in that post was how bad it already was. She did not say that she had been struggling to walk on set, that her co-star Linda Cardellini had been quietly covering for her during scenes that required physical movement, that the production had reorganized entire shooting schedules around her body's unpredictable limitations. She finished the season anyway, every single day. Multiple sclerosis is a chronic autoimmune disease of the central nervous system. It attacks the protective covering of the nerves, called myelin, causing them to break down. The result is a cascade of symptoms that can include numbness, weakness, vision problems, difficulty walking, loss of coordination, and chronic pain. There is no cure. There is no reversal. There is only management. And even that is not guaranteed. For Christina, the disease moved fast. Within months of her diagnosis, she was using a cane. Within a year, she was mostly confined to her home. Within 2 years, she had quietly accepted that her life as she had known it, the career, the independence, the physical freedom, was over. In February 2023, she confirmed publicly what many had feared. Because of her illness, she said, she would probably never act on camera again. 50 years of work, ended not by choice, but by a disease that gave her no choice at all. Can you imagine working your entire life for something since you were 3 months old, and then having it taken away in a single diagnosis? What would you do next? I genuinely want to know. Tell me in the comments. Christina Applegate did the opposite. In 2024, she launched a podcast called Misi alongside fellow actress Jamie Lynn Sigler, best known for her role in The Sopranos, who has lived with relapsing MS for over 2 decades. The two women sat down together, microphones in hand, and did something radical. They told the truth. Not the polished, publicist-approved version of the truth. The real truth. The kind that makes people uncomfortable. The kind that makes other MS patients feel seen for the first time. On that podcast, Christina revealed something that shook her fans to the core. Since her diagnosis in 2021, she had been hospitalized more than 30 times. 30 in less than 4 years. She described emergency room visits triggered by severe gastrointestinal complications, her body attacking itself from the inside out. She talked about the radiation absorbed from dozens of CT scans, about the tests, the treatments, the procedures that blur together after a while because there have simply been too many to count. She also talked about the mornings, the specific, quiet horror of waking up and not being able to move your arm far enough to reach the glass of water sitting 6 inches from your face, of needing help with things most people do without thinking, of losing the small dignities that healthy people never notice until they are gone. And yet, she kept showing up to that microphone, week after week. In January 2026, Jamie Lynn Sigler credited Christina publicly with inspiring her to be more open about her own condition. That is the kind of impact Christina has had, not just on fans, but on the people closest to her battle. She turned her worst chapter into a lifeline for strangers she will never meet. She made her pain into something that mattered beyond herself. From 30 hospitalizations to launching a podcast that helps thousands of people feel less alone, Christina chose to fight in public when she could have hidden in private. Do you think that kind of courage is something people are born with, or something they build? Vote in the comments. Born with it, or built it? I will read every answer. If the podcast was Christina Applegate opening a window into her life, the memoir was her tearing the whole wall down. On March 3rd, 2026, just weeks ago, Christina published her first book, She called it You with the Sad Eyes. Released through Little, Brown and Company, it is not a celebrity memoir full of glamorous anecdotes and carefully managed revelations. It is something far more rare. It is a document of survival, written by someone who is still in the middle of the fight. In her own words, Christina explained why she decided to write it. She said she was forced to slow down, that she had worked in television and film since she was 3 years old, and she loved it. But with MS, everything she thought was important shifted. She described the experience of finally deciding to tell it all as scary, genuinely scary, but necessary. Because no matter how dark it gets, she wrote, she truly believes that books can make people feel less alone. And dark it gets. The memoir does not spare the reader. Christina writes about waking up and being unable to move her arm far enough to grab the cup of water by her bed. She writes about the loss of independence, the slow, grinding erosion of the things most people take for granted. She writes about anger, about grief, about the particular cruelty of a disease that does not take you all at once but dismantles you piece by piece, day by day. She also writes about her daughter Sadie, about her husband Martin Lenoble, the Dutch musician who has stood beside her through every hospitalization, every bad morning, every moment when the weight of it all became almost unbearable. About what it means to be a mother when your body is no longer fully your own. In a February 2026 interview, just 1 month before the book's release, she told a reporter she was sick as a dog, her words, with her MS making her increasingly vulnerable to infections. She said it plainly, without self-pity, just as a fact of her life now. The book became an immediate conversation starter, because Christina did not write it to be admired. She wrote it to be understood. She said she wrote this book because she believes books can make people feel less alone. Has a book, or a story, ever done that for you? Made you feel less alone in something you were going through? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And your answer might just help someone else who is watching this right now. And then came this week. On April 17th, 2026, TMZ broke the news that sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. Christina Applegate had been admitted to a hospital in Los Angeles. Not for a routine visit, not for a quick procedure. According to reports, she had been there since late March, meaning she has been hospitalized for nearly 3 weeks as you watch this video. The entertainment world went quiet in the way it only does when something feels truly serious. Her representative issued a statement that confirmed nothing and denied nothing. The exact words were careful and deliberate. No comment on whether she is in the hospital or what medical treatments she is receiving. But then came the sentence that said everything without saying anything at all. She has had a long history of complicated medical conditions that she has been refreshingly open about, as evidenced in her memoir and on her podcast. Read that again. A long history of complicated medical conditions. That is not the language of a minor health scare. That is the language of a team that knows the full picture and has chosen, out of respect for Christina, to let her tell it on her own terms, in her own time. What we do know is this. In the weeks leading up to her hospitalization, the Messy podcast, her lifeline, her platform, her weekly act of defiance against silence, went on hiatus. On March 31st, co-host Jamie Lynn Sigler announced the pause, citing book tours and other engagements from both hosts. But those who have followed Christina's journey closely heard something else underneath that announcement. They heard a woman who needed to step back, who needed to rest, who had been pushing through for so long that her body finally demanded she stop. 30 hospitalizations in 4 years. A memoir written from a bed she often cannot leave. A podcast recorded on the good days, between the bad ones. And now this, 3 weeks in a Los Angeles hospital with no timeline for discharge and no public update on her condition. This is the reality of multiple sclerosis at its most aggressive. This is what the disease looks like when the cameras are off and the red carpets are gone. Right now, as you watch this, Christina has been in that hospital for nearly 3 weeks. No statement, No update, just silence. How does that make you feel? And what do you think she needs most from us right now? Drop it in the comments. Your words matter more than you know. There is a version of this story that is only about disease, about symptoms and hospitalizations and medical terminology. But that version misses the most important part. Because behind every difficult morning, behind every emergency room visit, behind every day she could not reach the glass of water on her nightstand, there were people. And those people are the reason Christina Applegate is still here, still fighting, still refusing to go quietly. The first is her daughter, Sadie Grace Lenoble. Born in 2011, Sadie is 14 years old now. She has grown up watching her mother face something no child should have to witness, a parent's body slowly becoming unreliable. And yet, by every account, Sadie has not just witnessed it. She has risen to meet it. Christina has spoken openly about the role her daughter plays in her daily life. The quiet acts of care, the presence, the love that does not flinch. It was Sadie who sat beside her mother at the 75th Emmy Awards in January 2024. That night, Christina walked onto that stage using a cane, took the offered arm of host Anthony Anderson, and stood in front of the entire television industry as the opening theme of Married with Children played through the theater. The audience rose to its feet. Every single person in that room stood up, not out of pity, but out of recognition, out of awe for a woman who showed up anyway. Then there is her husband, Martin Lenoble. The Dutch musician, a founding member of the alternative rock band Porno for Pyros, married Christina in February 2013. He has been beside her through her MS diagnosis, through every hospitalization, through the mornings when getting out of bed is not a given. Christina has described him as her anchor, the person who shows up without being asked, the person who stays, and beyond her family, there is her community, Jamie Lynn Sigler, the listeners of Measy, the readers of her memoir, the strangers who leave comments telling her that her honesty gave them the courage to talk about their own diagnosis for the first time. Christina Applegate built a career on making people feel something. It turns out she never stopped. Behind every person fighting a battle this hard, there is usually someone else holding them up. Who is that person in your life? The one who shows up without being asked? Give them a shout out in the comments right now. And if you are that person for someone else, we see you too. There is a moment in Christina Applegate's story that I keep coming back to. It is not the Emmy. It is not the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It is not even the standing ovation, as extraordinary as that was. It is something much smaller, much quieter. It is the image of a woman lying in bed in the early hours of the morning, unable to move her arm far enough to reach the glass of water 6 inches away from her face, and choosing, in that same moment, to write about it, to put it into a book, to hand that image to the world and say, this is real, this is what it looks like. You are not alone if this is your life too. That is not celebrity courage. That is human courage. The kind that does not require a camera or an audience. The kind that happens in the dark. When no one is watching, when the easiest thing in the world would be to say nothing. Christina Applegate spent 50 years making people laugh, making people cry, making people feel seen through characters on a screen. And now, in the hardest chapter of her life, she is still doing the exact same thing, just without the script. As of this week, she remains hospitalized in Los Angeles. No confirmed timeline, no public update, just the quiet hope of millions of people who grew up watching her, and who are now watching again for a very different reason. We do not know what the next chapter looks like, but if the last 5 years have taught us anything about Christina Applegate, it is this. She will face it on her own terms, with honesty, with humor, and with that particular kind of grace that only comes from someone who has already lost everything that does not matter. Our thoughts are with Christina, with Sadie, and with Martin during this time. From all of us here, if this story moved you, If it made you think about someone in your life who is fighting their own invisible battle, leave a heart below and share this video with one person who needs to hear it today. And if you want to stay close to stories like this one, real stories, honest stories, stories that actually matter, you already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button because we are here every week and we are not going anywhere.